Everybody, I'm Dan, Paper Skies,
I'm Sky, aka Skybrick.
and this is episode 6 now of the Skycast.
The Skycast is a series where we interview and have conversations with some of our favorite up-and-comers and established artists, in this case, in the music industry and beyond.
Today we have a super close guest to us who runs the label Rushdown. If you haven't heard of it, I would assume so if you're watching this podcast. He coined the term color bass, which is currently one of the main upcoming trends in the bass industry. With a very video gamey, colorful sound, has landed him EPs on Monstercat, Disciple, NSD, Circus Records, and so many other major dubstep labels with collaborations with HelaSex, and old classics like Flux Pavillion and Doctor P. With his very versatile sound, we would like to introduce our good friend, Chime.
Hello. Thanks for the detailed intro there.
Yeah, no worries. Gotta do it.
It was really, keeping this bio short was doing you an absolute injustice, like genuinely going down the list. Sample pack maker, label owner, what the heck's going on? So I'm gonna get right into it a little bit, but instead of starting with music as we usually do, I'm gonna start with a little direction. It's no secret that nearly everything relating to the Chime project is interconnected with video games. So what games have been inspiring you and your music a lot lately?
Oh damn. Well, I've actually. Okay, well, Breath of the Wild 2 trailer dropped recently, and like honestly, the whole like reverse stuff that's going on. I don't know if you've seen like the theory videos and stuff, but yeah, there's a lot of like time travel theories and all that kind of thing, and like ideas of like hiding pieces of music in the new music. Like Zelda's a long running series, and they managed to sneak a load of like old leitmotifs and themes into the new music, and that's definitely something I've had on my mind for like the album right now, is hiding stuff. I've always been a fan of like secrets in video games and kind of having to look a little bit closer, or I guess listen a bit closer to stuff that find like stuff that other people haven't figured out. So yeah, I'm in the process of developing practically like a side quest to my album. Yeah, so that piece of music in that trailer has definitely been influencing me. As for like games I've just been playing, I've been playing Metroid Zero Mission. I just completed that like a couple hours ago because the new Metroid game was announced.
Yep.
So other than that, I haven't really been playing a ton of games. Yeah, Zelda's always been like a big one, definitely.
Crazy stuff.
It seems like you've been focusing, like a lot on this album. I like what you said about like the returning motifs and something. It's something I've been trying to do a little bit in my music, like have some old melodies from old music kind of re-return and stuff. Do you see that happening a lot with a lot of the new songs that you're working on? Maybe bringing back a lot of motifs from even like as far back as the December alias?
Yeah, even further back actually. A lot of the, a lot of the album stuff. I'm kind of like revisiting old tracks as like December and even Caution and Crisis with my cousin. Yeah, to kind of like capture those kind of like moments of my like musical journey. So yeah, there's like full on remakes in there, but also I've always liked including like old melodies and stuff in my new tracks and stuff. There's a melody from my Sweden Minecraft remix that made its way into a December tune that is now being remade into a Chime tune. That's and awesome. It's so like that one melody has kind of gone all the way through. So yeah, I do that quite a lot. Like there's a really old melody from a track called Russian Roulette as Caution and Crisis that then made its way into like a Sex Whales remix, and then made its way into the Wasteland remix by Trivector with Au5. So yeah, they're just like little Easter eggs, but I'm planning on having it make a lot more sense for the album and for specific melodies to actually correlate with what I'm going for each of the tracks.
That's crazy. You mentioned the Sex Whales remix. I'm pretty sure that was actually the first Chime song that I had heard from you. No, actually December, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the
heard from you.
tail end of December, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember I was just, the way I would find my artists and music back then was just scrolling through like most popular trending EDM on like Apple Music and just buying every song which had like a cool 10-second preview. So,
Oh, really?
Across like a lot
No way.
of artists that now it's weird. I mean, even a guy like Rob Gasser, who's in the Rushdown server and everything as well, right?
Yeah, that's a weird way of finding
music,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
It goes to show some kids can be finding their stuff, right?
Me personally, I took the whole YouTube discovery route, and I found you through Temonite, believe it or not, the Hyper Reality remix. And then and then I heard the original. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool too. And then I eventually, here we are.
That was another, kind of like as December was picking up, sort of tune. Yeah, I always find it. I always wanted to get into that crew because there was like the crew of like newer sort of like bro step artists like Ehide, Different Heaven, Temonite, and I always wanted to like get into that group. And it was weird actually. Like I think last time I was in LA, I was staying in an Airbnb with Temonite and Different Heaven. Like it was really weird. And I was like, oh yeah, I've made tunes with all of these guys now. It's crazy.
Cool how things progress. And so kind of moving into more present day Chime, how much are you allowed to talk about the album? I know you mentioned you had some latent motifs from older works, but what are some new works we can possibly expect on this album that are allowed to be talked about?
It's I'd still say it's sort of in the beginning phases, really. What I do have is a fleshed out concept, and I've kind of set some rules for myself a little bit. Like I do want to make it seamlessly transition all the way through because I really like the way that feels for an album. I think that kind of puts it into almost a different category to an EP or just another collection of tracks where it's like one big long piece of music, effectively. So yeah, just stuff like that, and I have concept. I'm gonna bring my notes up right now. Let me see album stuff. Yeah, so it's gonna be very story driven, and I'm almost like writing Chime lore. So Chime's going to be less just like a name for me or my musical project, and it's more going to be like this world that I'm trying to develop.
Okay.
I don't want to give too much away because actually this plan, because I have a plan for like even the track list with a bunch of tracks I haven't even started writing yet, and that could change along the way. So I suppose we'll leave it at that for now.
The tracks that you have in that list that you said you haven't started yet, it's like kind of an interesting way to go about it. Are you doing it just by track name, or are you trying to go for a certain feel or a genre, or how are you organizing like the way you're going to create this album?
So I have track names in some cases, more like concepts in other cases. So one track I can tell you about because it's finished is a track called Chrysalism, which is the word for. Let me look up the actual like definition. Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Basically, I think this is kind of like you can look it up, but basically they come up with a bunch of new words to describe feelings and concepts that didn't have a name for it. So a great example of that is Sonder. I don't know if you've heard of that one. Which is the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness.
That's so cool.
Everyone has a story, and you might not realize, like, if you're walking through a crowd of people, it's like, think about how complicated your life is and all the different events that have happened around it, all the different feelings, experiences. Like, everyone is like that. And so that's a word for the realization the realization of that, really. Another one of these is Chrysalism.
Well, to any of our listeners who are struggling to name their track, Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Maybe
Honestly.
Inspire a new idea.
Okay, here we go. Chrysalism, the amniotic tranquility of being indoors during a thunderstorm, listening to waves of rain pattering against the roof, like an argument upstairs, whose muffled words are unintelligible, but whose crackling release of built-up tension you understand perfectly. The language is pretty flowery, but it's
like
basically
a whole,
like
story in a word. It's so cool.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a feeling I've had, and I haven't had a name for, and here it is. So there's an entire track on my album based around that, and so it tells that story with some more like personal touches. So for me, being inside is a really comforting thing. I don't like going outside. Don't want to go outside. Don't make me go outside. Like that's what I'm like most of the time. So that's just like that feeling is tripled when it's like really bad weather outside, and so like the track starts with the sound of a thunderstorm and the sound of a door closing as you come inside. You can hear the character toweling off, and then like put the kettle on and stuff, and then it's got a theme of like concentration. Because usually I just like being in this world of like I'm just working on music or whatever, right? While the world's just carrying on and I don't have to worry about it because there's a storm happening. Yeah, it's got like a drum and bass sort of theme. It's more specifically it's microfunk, which is a subgenre. I believe it was coined by an artist named Bop, just B-O-P. One of my favorite artists, and he makes microfunk, which is this like very kind of IDM techy sort of. It basically, if you get like drum and bass, IDM, and like ambient music, and you just kind of mix it all together, that's sort of what you end up with. So yeah, and I'd always wanted to make a track in this style, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity for that because I always associate that genre of music with concentration and this kind of like not sad but almost melancholy sort of just amniotic tranquility as it says on the description.
The words
so that's the kind of thought process I'm trying to put behind like every one of the tracks. And then tying that into a greater narrative, and its position on the album means something as well, and like I just want to have it dripping with meaning, really.
It sounds super thought out. I imagine that with this song, with a lot of songs in the album, we're still going to hear a lot of that like color-based sort of inspiration in your sound, right? It's so like this one I do have it's got that color-based sort of vibe going throughout, even though it's like drum and bass or microfunk or whatever. It's all gonna sound like that, really. You're not gonna get like headbanger tunes from my album. That's not gonna happen. Gotcha.
No, definitely different vibe. And I think that's what's so cool about this this whole color-based movement or terminology or whatever people call it, is that more so than a standard club hitter or banger, you can still have those vibes or energies going on. So let's kind of transition into let's talk color bass in case somehow you've come to a podcast with Chime, Skybreak, and Paper Skies and don't know what color bass is. How would you describe it to a newcomer?
So I get asked this quite a lot because it's not necessarily a subgenre name. It's more of a color bass is a categorization of bass music that focuses on melody, emotion, and vibrancy, while maintaining elements of more aggressive, impact-focused dubstep. So the reason why I kind of decided I wanted a name for what I was making was because the term melodic dubstep became more akin to like future bass, more over that side. The kind of like Seven Lions, Illenium, very kind of super saw focused stuff. Pry bangers, that term, like
Pry bang,
all that stuff, and that was being pushed further and further and further away from a lot of the stuff I really like about dubstep, which is the fun, the basses, the crazy sound design, all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, dubstep as we know it, with like sort of like tear out and rhythm and all those kind of terms coming along, were being pushed even further this way, like that. So yeah, color bass became a term to categorize that kind of middle space that sits between those two worlds. And as they drift further apart, color bass is in the center with open arms. So yeah, it's really it's anything that sits between those two worlds. So it's got a little bit of like the grit and the impact of yeah, but like I guess like big headbanger tunes or whatever. It's got basses, and then from the other side, it's got the obviously like harmonic, tonal content, and that kind of stuff. Borrowing from both of those worlds, and just that's my favorite place to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't feel the need for it for a while, because basically all dubstep up until about like maybe 2013, 14, what was melodic. Even the heaviest tunes had a focus on melody and riffs and chords and that sort of thing. So yeah, so a lot of like old Skrillex counts as color bass, I would say. Like kind of the birth of it is really like Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. The idea of combining these two worlds into one track. So yeah, hopefully that explains it, I think.
Definitely. Like,
for sure.
When I was making my music years ago, before getting invited to the Rushdown group and everything, it was like my music sat in this really uncanny space where I couldn't figure out where to push it, because it wasn't melodic enough for, like you said, the kind of like fans of Seven Lions and Millennium in them, because there was all these dubstep sounds, and maybe it wasn't like 140. I did something in like 175 BPM. They're like, okay, well I can't like headbang to this, and it just didn't make sense to a lot of people. But it wasn't heavy enough that I could push it to the dubstep audience. So when Rushdown came around, and this sort of like sound was coined, it just helped me find a place of like, oh, okay, so the music I'm making does have a home now. It does have like a sound, and there are other people trying to do it. Because besides that, people would be like, oh, what kind of music do you make? And I would just have to really vaguely explain, like, yeah, you know a guy named like Au5 or like Chime. It's like that, but then melodic, and there's dubstep elements, and it was just super messy, and no one really understood it until they heard it, and it would just cause more.
No, Dan, I had that exact same dilemma for years. I was at a networking event run by Cymatics like 3 or 4 years ago. Everyone was like, you know, trap or hip hop producers. It was pretty awkward. I was like the one. There was like the dubstep guys in like the corner, and we were all like looking down and like talking to each other that way.
And
everyone was like, "Oh, like I make dubstep," and someone says, "Oh, well, I make like slander stuff," and then I would have to be like, I make like a cross between like melodic and heavy, but not like this kind of melodic and heavy or this kind of melodic.
Exactly,
heavy.
yeah.
It's just like now there's a term, and I think a lot of people are very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people attributing it to, you know, some of the more recent sound design techniques that have come out for fusing like melodic stuff with basses, but that's kind of okay as well, because that counts as far as I'm concerned. If there's any effort being made to have both of those things going on, then it's color bass. And the other thing I like about it is that with dubstep, well, first of all, dubstep as a term has been so far removed from when it was coined. You know, originally like Burial was dubstep, and it's completely unrecognizable from then on, really. So it's also a way of like introducing different tempos as well. Because I always found it weird that even though a track could be made with entirely dubstep elements, you could have a dubstep kick and snare, basses, all the things that you would now count as dubstep in, you know, but because it was playing at a different tempo, it had to be a different genre entirely. Like, I always found that a bit weird. So color bass is another way of getting around that. It's like you can make color bass with an electro house kind of rhythm, or at like a drum step tempo, but it all counts as color bass because it's in this world that uses this kind of sound design. So it's more of a categorization than a subgenre.
So now that this kind of color-based categorization, as you say it, has become a bit more public, I know I've been noticing a bit more people kind of sinking into those same, you know, resonator, vocoder kind of things. And do you think the genre is actually beginning to oversaturate, or do you see it kind of being taken a lot further into the future with like a bunch of untapped potential?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's kind of like I'm almost having my own like Zomboy moment where everyone started trying to be
Terror
like
Squad,
trying to make Terror Squad. So yeah, it is interesting. Like going through the Rushdown demos specifically, like even in the space of the past like year and a half, it's really switched. Yeah, and then like over the course of those 2 years, I've really seen like people have started to catch on, and really give this sort of sound a go. And yeah, I suppose like stemming from when Ace Aura joined, that's really when we started like putting more effort, I suppose, into getting a really nice combination of these two worlds, rather than going, okay, super saw, and then the next bar is like basses, okay, melodic something, yeah, which is exactly what I was doing at that point. And then Ace Aura came along and was merging it much more intuitively, and I was like, well, this is what I'm all about. Why am I not doing this sort of thing as well? And so I started like experimenting and figuring out my own stuff. And then like everyone else in the Rushdown chat or on the roster was doing the same sort of thing. So it's been a really nice kind of like flourishing sound that's come out of a group of producers and sparked by Ace Aura, really. I forgot what the original question was entirely.
No, it was about kind of.
Or do I think it's being oversaturated?
Oversaturate, yeah.
A little. There's a lot of the a lot of the Rushdown demos are very much like, okay, cool, you figured out how to make those sounds.
Yeah.
Now let's do something cool. Let's do something cool with it. Like, yeah. For me, like, I'd take those kind of tracks over like a completely atonal track any day, because they both might be incredibly generic, but the fact that there's just a little bit more for me to latch onto if there's tonality, because it's like if you're producing an atonal tune, and I've thought about trying it, because I think I'd really struggle. It's kind of like producing with such a limit. It's like producing in 2D. Because really, if you think about it MIDI-wise, you're producing on just one note, practically. And as soon as you introduce tonality, it's like you're looking into 3 dimensions, and suddenly there are notes up here and down here and all over the place. So it must be really hard.
For sure. And kind of following up on that front, what do you think are some sides of color bass that haven't necessarily been explored yet? I know there's a lot of the stuff, like you said, very multi-dimensional, trying to expand upon this already established 2D tropes, but I feel like there's definitely a whole other plane that hasn't been explored. Maybe one taking the dubstep side altogether. And do you think there's anyone that's pushing that side a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's an artist is it False Noise?
False Noise is cool, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, False Noise, who basically their EP. In fact, let me get it up so I can actually like properly suggest it. Yeah, Emerald Green by False Noise. So this EP was released in 2018 actually, and a lot of the sounds on here feel very similar to the kind of like color based stuff we've been developing. But yeah, this seems to be like a completely different strand. It's one of those like things where like two people just they ended up doing the same sort of thing. But this is very much in like a neurofunk drum and bass context. Yeah, so definitely check out Emerald Green EP by False Noise. That's a new thing, is like taking color bass into entirely new genres and that sort of thing. I mean, I think Pleague did an amazing job with their EP on Rushdown, because none of those tracks are dubstep, like not even close. I think there's a couple like 150 BPM tracks, but you wouldn't call them dubstep at all. they're all color based. And so that's really interesting. It's like, okay, if you divorce all of the dubstep stuff, you're left with the essence of whatever color base is, then that opens up so many possibilities, really. So that's what I'm interested in seeing next, really.
You get almost like dips kind of into the future bass category there when you get to that level, because it's just exploring like really fun creative ideas, using more like synths and colorful sounds as opposed to like, you know, heavy basses and that like grittier side you were talking about. So I'm sure both of you guys get this quite a bit, but I'll have people that'll message me with the classic question: how do you get on Rushdown? You know, like a very simple, short message, right? And then if you answer it, it develops into a huge conversation. So for anyone watching at home that might be interested in the genre, what's some advice that you have for any new upcoming color-based producers that might want to join the Rushdown family?
Okay, I'm pulling my website up because I I created a page for this on my website. If you go to chimetunes.net and go to the Rushdown section, I've created a demo submission guide, and it's got things to avoid, things we're looking for, like ideal things, other things to bear in mind. Basically, to give a very brief overview, how to get on Rushdown, things to avoid, mixdown not up to par is like one of the main things. Like, this is completely true. It takes only a couple of seconds to gauge where an artist is at with the quality of their mixdowns. I'm sure you guys also have that sort of experience where people will be asking for feedback or whatever, and it's just like you know how developed their sound is as soon as you hear it, because you've already passed that point. So like, it, as tough as it is, like it doesn't matter how great your ideas are, if the mixdown isn't solid, it's going to be very difficult for us to like accept it, or at least not without a lot of feedback. And generally don't want to be giving feedback to like every artist that we release from. So the other thing is sonically too close to another Rushdown artist. Linking back to what you guys were saying with like
oversaturation.
Oversaturation. Yeah. But we want to be really careful, because like if we're going to be sort of like the home of this new sound, effectively, we want to make sure that everyone's exploring their own stuff. We want to encourage that as much as possible. We don't want like all of our artists to get confused for each other and that sort of thing. So those are some of the main things to avoid. Yes, please. This section. So a combination of sonic styles we've never heard before, / unique concepts and world building. So for this section, I actually referenced a couple of the recent like EPs we released, and explaining why we think they fit into this category effectively. So like with LM's recent Hyperlight EP, this is an EP that's a full project devoted to the universe of a single indie game, Hyperlight Drifter, and exploring existential themes representing the unique visual aesthetic of the game in audio form, and then mixing that with color base and all that kind of stuff.
Style, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so like another example is Similar Outskirts, Titans EP. This is an entire EP based on the legendary Pokemon from a single Pokemon game. Like this is what I absolutely love, is just getting so specific with concepts for tracks, because a great dubstep tune, sure, it's a great dubstep tune, but it's gonna be just put in the pile with all the other great dubstep tunes. That's cool, but if there's like this extra layer and flavor, it's gonna remain unique for the entire lifetime, you know. So that's really what we're looking for, is like, I want to hear that you're really making an effort to try and separate yourself from everyone else on the label, and come up with something really cool, unique, and fresh.
And I think this is a good challenge for all our listeners at home, especially if you're struggling to make a track. Pick an element or like something really cool from a game you like, or a TV show you love, or something very pop culture-y. And within those limitations of trying to make a song with that theme, you might actually come across something freaking cool. So maybe even submit it to Rushdown or one of your favorite labels. I think that's a cool thing to kind of get into, especially I know me personally, I've done a lot of EPs and shit inspired by games. Like Lumino is very Ori and Zelda inspired, and Above the Clouds. We don't talk about that one. But yeah, so it's yeah, very good advice, especially if you're moving on to Rushdown stuff.
It also makes it like 3,000% easier to come up with ideas for stuff.
Yeah, within that limitation, it's like much easier.
Yeah, because instead of sitting down and going, right, today I'm gonna write a dubstep track at 150 BPM in F minor. It's not that anymore. It's like, okay, I've got a theme. How am I gonna represent that with music? Like with Bloom, my track Bloom, I was like, okay, I feel like it would be really cool to make the most chill rhythm tune of all time. How the hell do I do that?
Yeah.
So I was combining like the melodic rhythm stuff that I've been developing in the background. I've also been getting way into like lo-fi hip hop sort of vibes. So I was like, okay, we can mix those two together. What is a cool theme that would glue everything together into one package? And I was thinking just like a lot of lo-fi hip hop makes me think of just like these kind of like flowery aesthetics. Yeah. So I was like, okay, if we have a flowery aesthetic, how do flowers sound to me? What would a flower sound like in my head? And then I actually did a bit of research, and I was like, I'm sure in video games, flowers usually have like certain sound effects associated with them, and it's quite often harp sounds and that sort of thing. If you collect a flower power up or whatever, what does that usually sound like? Yeah. So now it's gone from I'm just writing a dubstep tune to mixing all of these things in a big pot, and you come out with something that you feel is much more unique and personal to you because you've combined all these things in your head. No one else would have made a track like that, you know?
Yeah. I like the personal aspect because you're only going to focus on the things that you like, and focusing on a specific topic like that, it's going to be a lot more fun and a lot more creative of a process, right? I think it's something I'm still yet to do with a lot of my music, but been enjoying like trying to delve a little bit deeper into myself and my interests and what I like when like writing a song and starting from scratch, right?
Totally, yeah. Like on your first episode with Aesor and Millennial Trash, you asked Millennial Trash about the whole car thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were like, are you thinking of like putting the car stuff together with your project? And he was like, yeah, I've got a tune. That theme in mind. I think it's probably out by now, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, Knockout now. Check it out.
Now.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, it's just great. It works so perfectly, and no one else would have written track with Millennial Trash's style with a car theme.
Yeah.
No one would have done that. So it's just so much more valuable. I feel like.
Definitely.
And to do that.
It's cool you reach back all the way to episode 1. In episode 2, kind of connecting to the whole talk about Rushdown and labels, we talked to Temanite, and he told us a lot about the perks of self-releases versus like label releases, and that a lot of his music is predominantly self-released. I think back in the day on your old aliases, we saw a lot of self-releases coming out from Caution and Crisis in December, but it seems now with Chime you're moving more towards sticking with a lot of the big dubstep labels and getting your name as out there as possible. What are your thoughts on that, just the difference between doing a self-release and working with a label like you have?
Yeah, so I guess the benefit of self-releases, just like raw facts of it, is that you keep everything. You keep all the rights, the royalties. You can do whatever you want with that music. So what Temanite's done that's been really beneficial for his brand has been like syncing his music with like Geometry Dash and all these different like rhythm games, and that's how he's become so recognized and known. And like his streams are ridiculous. Like, in comparison to mine, in comparison to a lot of like successful dubstep producers, his streams are off the charts. You know, there's like friends of mine from like my school that know Temanite from rhythm games. You know, like that's how kind of like wide reaching it becomes. So that's a huge benefit of self-releasing. The benefit for me of working with labels. But once you work with certain labels, there's kind of like a perception that you've stepped up the ladder a little bit. So like, for example, Sky, you probably had a feeling of like, oh, I've gone up, like when you had your Disciple EP, like main label as well. So that must have been you must have like started feeling like you were more a part of that community, the greater dubstep community, and you had more sort of opportunities and things. Am I right in saying that?
A little bit. Those get a bit weirder with bigger labels, especially if they have like a core roster, because all them talk, and obviously now that I've had the release, it's easier to reach out to these people and like say hello, because they know me. I'm not no longer like just some dickhead. But I think what the real benefit of releasing with labels like Disciple and even a few smaller ones is you kind of collect some of their fans into your basket a little bit. Yeah, I'm not saying use the label or anything, but I think it is kind of cool to look at it as like, this is a whole new group of people that would never have listened to your music otherwise, and now here they are.
Totally, yeah, that's exactly it. Is like, yeah, that really when you're working to promote your music, not necessarily aiming towards the fans you've already got. It's trying to collect more people, and the more labels you work with, the more people are likely to find out about you from that label. So it's really just casting your net out, and it's just going to be sort of exponential from there. That's a big benefit. The other benefit as well is, especially with the US, promoters are generally looking for these label releases to help them feel more secure in booking you for shows. So like if they're booking an artist and they've just had a release on Disciple, they've also just had a release on, I don't know, Monstercat and Never Say Die, they can be fairly certain that a lot of people will have heard about them. And even if they're still like smaller, they can be they've got that stamp of approval from those labels. Yeah, so that's a big thing, and that's a lot of the reason why I was able to start like touring in the US at all was because I was going for these label releases.
I feel like the label releases also help you kind of experiment with your sound a bit too, and like interact with audiences that you maybe wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to. I know we kind of already said that with collecting fans and putting them in the basket sort of thing, which I think is super, super true. But looking at like what we were talking about with Rushdown having its own unique sound and that like color-based sort of flavor, in the same way I'd imagine like NSD to have a much heavier sound and something a lot more aggressive. So if you as Chime want to have a release on NSD and Rushdown, you kind of have to rework your sound a little bit while still keeping it
exactly, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's not like a selling out sort of thing. It's I see it more of like a challenge, like an interesting challenge. Like when I had my first like EPs on Firepower Records back in the day, I was like, okay, what are Firepower Records releases mostly like? Pretty heavy. I'm gonna have to like take that as a challenge to try and make something that's still me and feels like it fits a part of that discography. But Sky, you were gonna say something. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna actually circle it back around to Rushdown and say, actually, as of now, the most recent release is from DDD, who's usually like this heavy ass like tear out rhythm producer. And all of a sudden, they made something that's very colorful and very them. And I don't think if Rushdown didn't exist, they would never have made that song.
Yeah. Possibly not. And that's something I really enjoy about having Rushdown, under my belt, is that like there's a place for that, and that was what a lot of my ambition for it was. Like initially, it was just like, oh, let's just release music from friends, and also it's a place for me to self-release stuff. But then around the time that we rebranded to like my own artwork and stuff, that was when I was like, okay, there are less and less places in the music scene that are taking this kind of music. It would be really cool if I could provide that platform in any capacity to younger producers that are looking to get started. And I'm really, really proud to say that that's what it is now. Like I'm able to get tracks from these artists with like less than 100 followers on SoundCloud in front of like some serious people. So yeah, it's I love that. That's great.
That's such a good thing about Rushdown that I always admired is like when Rushdown was first made, I remember seeing that first compilation and being like, oh damn, Chime started a label and it has The Brig, it has Bullseye, it has AV, it has Decembera, and like all of these artists that I was already a really big fan of. But then around the time when I was brought on, when Ace Aura was brought on, and a whole lot of these new people, it was interesting to see the shift in the way that things changed, because now it was like all of these new upcoming artists that were really trying to develop the sound that you're talking about and everything were getting that opportunity, which otherwise I don't think any of us would have had for quite a while, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a small label, but I've always wanted it to be, you know, I've never wanted it to be in competition with any of the larger labels. I wanted it to be an entry point. And I wanted it to be really approachable. So that's why, you know, I've worked really hard to like, the Discord now is like everyone all in one group, and anyone can just join and get started. Like if they are interested in making this sort of music, they can just join and talk to like you guys or any of the other like artists on the label. We're really accessible, whereas like the larger labels feel completely out of your reach up until a certain point. So I really like that. I don't want it to become a massive label. I want it to always be focused on keeping this sound alive. And when I decided that was going to be a thing, it was looking bleak. It was looking really bleak, because there really wasn't anywhere was taking this kind of stuff at all. And now we're at a point where this kind of sound is infiltrating the scene a little bit, which is crazy. It's crazy. We got Virtual Riot making color bass and using the term color bass.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's mad.
And you've done a great job with like the artist selection, I think, in general too. Like, I mean, I was, you know, pretty much a nobody when I first came on, and I've gotten to a point, I think, of like some mild success that I'm really, really proud of personally. But seeing a lot of the other artists grow too, like Sekai, Similar Outskirts, Ace Aura, of course. Like Ace Aura now being like a huge potential headline name, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I keep saying like I am fully expecting us to be booked on a show and for his name to be above mine. Like fully expecting that. I'm just like, I'm trying to get that in my head. So that's all you need really, is like that seed, that like initial kind of spark of an idea, and someone to go, let's cultivate this. And then like there we go. See you later, Eric. Kick some ass in the rest of the scene. Like, and that's great. Like, I wouldn't want to like drag him back to Rushdown and go, no, you're releasing here, because we've already moved on to, okay, who else can we bring up? Come on, let's go. Let's make this community. So, yeah, that's kind of my idea behind it.
Yeah, well, I love the mentality, man. It's super wholesome, and it just focuses on the community, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, it's great to see. I'm thinking, since we're just around the hour mark, which means this is a long one, and for good reason, I say we start moving to our dumb research section, which you might remember from the Ace Aura Millennial Trash one.
I'm looking forward to this, yeah.
Yes, alright, so...
It's a lot to dig up.
Luckily, I have we have some internal sources that have told us a bit of information, and I think the first thing we want to go over is your wedding with the lovely Miss Chime. It seemed even... dubstep really does flow through your veins, because even the reception party took a bit of a dubstep twist.
Yeah. Well, I had this dumb idea. I was basically like, okay, how often are we going to have an opportunity to get all my dubstep friends in one place, with the ability to just play our own music and stuff? So I had this dumb idea to do like a back-to-back with everyone at the end. Didn't really work out because the CDJs we ordered were really shoddy, like terrible. Oh, no. Yeah, ask Odd Prophet. He was like trying to play stuff, and it was just not happening. But yeah, so we had a bunch of like dubstep folks there. It was really interesting actually having friends from school and also like my family being there. It was really weird and interesting, and yeah, it was cool.
That's gotta be sick. Like
The
your
wedding
parents moshing to the moshing to your dubstep. That would be
Yeah,
an
well,
experience.
yeah. There wasn't too much dubstep. It was, yeah, because I curated all the music because I'm insane. And I basically just made like a 6 hour long mix of stuff for it. And like, yeah, so there was like pop stuff in there as well. And there was like just general dancey stuff. And then I did like an hour of like golden oldies for the like a lot of my family. So yeah, but it was super fun. So some of my favorite moments of the wedding were like seeing Connor Whitmore, Papa Naughty Step. Oh no, just regular Naughty Step. React to some of the mixes I'd made. I was like, Connor, you have to hear what I just did in this mix. Like, listen out for this. So that was a lot of fun. It was weird and fun and cool, and it's just one of those things you wouldn't be able to do any of the time, really.
Speaking of some faulty decks or something a little different, you're no stranger to playing shows. You've played across Canada, US, UK, you name it, you've basically been there. But some of our listeners might not be aware of this one show in particular where your DJ skills were pushed to their absolute limit. I don't know if you know exactly what show I'm talking about, but tell us about No Man's Land 2018.
No mans were at that land. No man. That wasn't even like the worst for in terms of like mixing. The faders were just like barely on. Was the idea. Well, to set the scene, I get this booking for a festival called No Man's Land in Oxford in the UK. Oxford is like where Oxford University is like what Hogwarts is based on. Yeah, just like this random field outside of Oxford. I was like, what the hell? But I saw the Culprit was playing, supposedly, and so I was like, okay, well, it must be legit. So any excuse for the UK dubstep crew to get together and play dubstep, really, because dubstep events are so few and far between in the UK. Like it's like one a year you'd get. So we had like Jono and Alex, Exobolt, those guys. We had like Jarvis. We had Odd Prophet again was there. It was a bunch of us, and it was just us. It was just us in the tent. Like that was it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go play my set now to you guys. There was just no one there.
Wow.
There was no one there. There were like a million stages as well. There was like 8 different stages with all artists that are being paid to play there. I was just like, who made this festival? So that was really fun because we just messed around and then the faders flew off the mixer. So I was like, there's a video that Jonathan took of me going like at the crossfader just not being there anymore. But yeah, to be honest, far from the most difficult set I've played.
Yeah.
I've played sets where like there's no monitors.
Oh,
so it's
no.
just front of house. So you've got all you're getting is like the reverberation off the back wall, which is like a full second later. That's rough. And like
Was there no booth
played
out for your headphones?
sorry?
Was there no like booth out for your headphones either by any chance?
There was headphones, but like it's
Yeah.
it's rough. Like it's really rough, and like it's really quiet where you are, but it's super loud there. Yeah, and then there was this like Halloween event I played in Pittsburgh. That was like which was the opposite. There was monitors, but then the speakers that went out cut out.
Oh.
So what I had to do,
Oh my God.
what I had to do was just turn one of my monitors to the crowd and then just crank up the booth knob so that we could keep like playing music. There's chaotic stuff like that all the time.
These things happen, and you managed to land on your feet and still possibly play a good set. So There you
Yeah,
go.
that was weird, that one, because I was like, why is everyone like really not hype anymore? Because I just had the volume from the monitors, so I didn't know that like front of house was out. I was like, what? Everyone's really like serious right now. What's going on?
Yeah, what's happening?
All right, I think we're just about now at the 50-60 minute mark, about an hour in, so we're gonna close things off here. But wow, thank you so much for being on, Chime. That was a great conversation. I think one of the
No
smoother
problem.
we've had
Thank you,
so
guys.
far, so really appreciate it. Is there any last comments you wanted to mention? Anything on the way? If this is coming out in August now, that you might want to make fans aware of?
Yeah, coming out in August. So I guess coming up. I don't know when it would be announced though. We have a tune coming up. This is coming out when we think it's coming out, and it's collab, and it'll be fun. I don't know. I guess I'm always just gonna plug Rushdown, really. Which I mean, everybody knows Rushdown already if they're listening to this. But yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up that will be out already by the point this episode comes out. So, if I am correct, we have a single from Quartz Zone, we have an EP from Sixth Sense, we have an AB situation from Nemesis, and we have New Colors Volume 5 out.
All right.
And then coming up, we have something new from Similar Outskirts. If it comes out at this point.
Smoothly, of course, yeah.
And we are also coming up to our 100th Rushdown release.
Wow. Big celebration for that one then.
Yeah, so lots of fun stuff to check out. That's what I would suggest you go and do.
So
Plenty of stuff.
lots of new music, lots of new things with Rushdown. Make sure you check out Rushdown if you haven't already. Tons of new emerging artists. Thank you again, Chime, for being on. Make sure you guys follow him on his socials. Please follow Skycast on our socials. We'll have a episode dropping every Wednesday. Chime, thank you for being on. This is amazing.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And,
Yes, yeah, thanks, guys. Oh, and also go follow Paper Skies and Skybreak
Thank you.
everywhere, please.
Thank
you.
All right,
Appreciate
everybody.
it.
Cheers until the next one.
All right, everyone. See you guys around. Bye-bye.